Here with Sky News, good evening. Diana's body lies at rest this evening after an extraordinary day in which people around the world said farewell. It ended with her burial on an island at the family's ancestral home. It began at Kensington Palace. Her sons William and Harry joined the cortege during the slow procession to Westminster Abbey.
During an informal service, Diana's brother, Earl Spencer, described her as the very essence of compassion, of duty, of style, of beauty. He delivered a bitter attack on the media, accusing photographers of hounding her to her death. And he pledged a different upbringing for her sons. In the streets of London, millions gathered to remember the princess. The air was filled with the scent of flowers and a respectful silence.
The first glimpse of Diana's coffin at the start of her final journey proved too overwhelming for some of those waiting at the gates of Kensington Palace. The gun carriage bearing the coffin was escorted by Welsh Guardsmen who'd flown to London earlier this week from Northern Ireland, where they've been patrolling the border around Crossmaglen. In the shimmering haze of early autumn, the carriage made its way through Hyde Park. So many people had gathered en masse, yet for each of them it was a very private moment. At Buckingham Palace, there was another sign of how so much has changed this past week, when the royal family walked to the palace gates, lining the streets like so many others, it seemed, to pay their final respects. The exceptions were the two young princes, William and Harry, who, as so many had hoped, joined their father, grandfather and uncle at St. James's Palace to follow their mother's coffin. It was a formidable ordeal for these two young men. Prince William in particular found it hard to disguise his anguish. For Prince Harry, there were words of comfort from Earl Spencer. Behind the royal party came representatives of 100 charities, those whom Diana had helped or befriended through her work with good causes. At 11 o'clock, the coffin arrived at Westminster Abbey, the timing precise, the arrangement so far flawless, despite the brief time to prepare. Through the great west door of Westminster Abbey, the Welsh Guardsmen carried Diana's coffin towards the nave. The nation held its breath for the young soldiers as they transferred the coffin onto the catafalque, the most onerous duty these young men are ever likely to perform. The ceremony was to embrace many traditional aspects of an Anglican funeral, but also some modern touches, reflecting the Queen's words that this would be a unique service for a unique person. The occasion would also be marked by a shattering address from Diana's brother, Earl Spencer. Outside the Abbey, as at many points throughout the country, giant television screens broadcast the service to hundreds of thousands of people, some of whom joined in the singing of Diana's favourite hymn. In a sad echo of a happier day, the Prime Minister read from the same passage of Corinthians which had formed part of Charles and Diana's wedding in 1981.
When I was a child, I spake as a child, I understood as a child, I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. For now, we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then shall I know even as also I am known. And now abideth faith, hope, love, these three. But the greatest of these is love.
And then the moment which reflected the extent to which the people had dictated the tone and character of the service.
Goodbye, England's rose, may you well grow in our hearts. You are the grace that placed yourselves where lives were torn apart. You called out to our country, and you whispered to those in pain. Now you belong to heaven, and the stars spell out your name. And it seems to me you lived your life like a candle in the wind, never fading with the sunset when the rain set in. And your footsteps will always fall here along England's greenest hills. Your candles burned out long before your legend ever will.
Since Diana's death, Elton John's Candle in the Wind has been the most requested record on Britain's radio stations. Originally a tribute to Marilyn Monroe, the song's been rededicated to Diana, who, like the American movie star, died amid events seemingly beyond her control. The tribute from Earl Spencer was nothing less than astounding, an address which pulled no punches about his sister's life and death, and left the royal family in little doubt that Princes William and Harry, like their mother, should stay close to the people.
On behalf of your mother and sisters, I pledge that we, your blood family, will do all we can to continue the imaginative and loving way in which you are steering these two exceptional young men, so that their souls are not simply immersed by duty and tradition, but can sing openly as you planned. We fully respect the heritage into which they have both been born, and will always respect and encourage them in their royal role. But we, like you, recognize the need for them to experience as many different aspects of life as possible, to arm them spiritually and emotionally for the years ahead. I know you would have expected nothing less from us. William and Harry, we all care desperately for you today. We're all chewed up with sadness at the loss of a woman who wasn't even our mother. How great your suffering is, we cannot even imagine. I would like to end by thanking God for the small mercies he's shown us at this dreadful time, for taking Diana at her most beautiful and radiant, and when she had joy in her private life. Above all, we give thanks for the life of a woman I'm so proud to be able to call my sister, the unique, the complex, the extraordinary and irreplaceable Diana, whose beauty, both internal and external, will never be extinguished from our minds.
Significantly, there was widespread applause inside and outside the Abbey for Earl Spencer's address. At the end of the service, the country and millions more around the world joined in 1 minute's silence. The half-muffled bells of the Abbey church ended the silence, and as the hearse departed, spontaneous applause broke out, in part a final farewell, and perhaps too a moment of relief that this most harrowing of mornings was drawing to an end, as was an extraordinary period in the life of this country. For 1 week in early September, a princess became a queen who found an eternal place in the hearts of her people, and the people saluted her as one who showed she could walk with kings nor lose the common touch.
And now, with a ripple of applause, the Princess began the last stage of her journey home. Starting off back along the route she came down just a short time before, on a gun carriage, escorted by guardsmen. That had been the very public part of the mourning process. But now that process, the mood and the purpose, was to change from a semi-state occasion to one of private mourning. As she passed the troopers outside Horse Guards Parade and headed towards her home, Althorpe, where she would be buried on a small island in the middle of the family estate. And already across the route she was travelling, mourners were throwing the last of the millions of flowers brought in her memory. Past Buckingham Palace, where the Union flag was still flying at half-mast, an unprecedented change to tradition and protocol. And the Union flag would come down and the royal standard would fly again from the masthead, once the Queen, as reigning sovereign, returned. The police outriders formed an arrow formation, 5 in front of the hearse and 2 behind. As people surged forward and the flowers came thick and fast, sliding across the hearse, in front of it, some landing on the windscreen and getting caught in the windscreen wipers. More and more the flowers came, and a ripple of applause again, with the crowds very, very close to the hearse as it passed slowly through this narrow street. So many flowers on this hearse now, covering the bonnet, covering the roof. At the start of the motorway, the cortege stopped just for a minute or two, and someone got out to start clearing the bonnet of the huge pile of flowers that were on it, taking them off so at least the driver could see where he was going. First from one side, and then from the other. And leaving them by the side of the road. All the bridges across the motorway were lined with people. And even pedestrians now on the motorway, climbing up the grassy banks, pushing their way forward, all wanting to get one last glimpse of this small funeral cortege. At Althorpe's local station, Long Buckley, the royal train had arrived carrying the Prince of Wales, his 2 sons, William and Harry, Earl Spencer and his 2 sisters, Lady Jane Fellowes and Lady Sarah McCorquodale, as well as Diana's mother, Mrs. Shan Kidd. Here, a fleet of Rolls-Royces were waiting for them. And this was the way they travelled the last few miles to the Althorpe estate, along this road lined with people. And through the gates, where again flowers are piled high on either side, and into the privacy of this family home. And here they would wait for the funeral cortege carrying Princess Diana's body to come. Slowly now, round the final bends of the narrow country road, came this small procession. And still the flowers came, looping through the air, some landing on the hearse, others falling onto the road. So that in the end, it was a flowered-covered hearse which took the princess past the last piles of flowers and into the Althorpe estate for the very last time.